Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
All right, folks, what you're seeing there, what you saw there is video, a massive explosion as the terror group ISIS destroys Jonah's tomb in the city of Mosul. Joining us now, once again, to talk about what's going on is historian, columnist, and a former Oxford and Harvard professor, Timothy Stanley. Hello, Timothy.
Hello.
That is horrific to watch, and and again, I just look at a world that is silent, and I try to talk about this every day on this show, and it always comes back to me really taking out my my anger at our administration, but I really guess it's anger at the world as a Jew to see what's happening to Christians in Mosul in particular right now, and nobody, except for people like you and me and some others, seem to really care.
I agree with you. I think we're actually witnessing the destruction of an entire civilization, of a society. And that's a remarkable war crime, obviously without any justification, which the West really has no comment to offer upon. And for those of us who see it, obviously part of our reaction must be horror. We have a duty to tell people about it. We also have a duty to ask ourselves why our society chooses not to speak about what's happening there. And I think it says something about our lack of confidence as a Judeo-Christian Western culture, that we don't like commenting upon a lot of what goes on in the Middle East. And by doing that, by ignoring it, we are essentially facilitating it. And it's just absolutely horrendous. It's so sad to see, the destruction of Jonah's tomb. This is a holy prophet, and the West has nothing to say about it whatsoever. And of course, it's not just relics being destroyed. It's also people being killed, being driven out of their homes, being raped, being treated in this dreadful, dreadful manner. And the West is shamefully silent.
And Timothy, it's not just Mosul. It's been going on for quite some time, and this is just the latest chapter in what's happening to Christians. But, they don't like talking about what's happening in the Middle East when it comes to Christians being persecuted or having genocide committed against them, but they have no problem if a Palestinian child is killed, then it's the equivalent of 9/11 in media coverage and the West's condemnation and people motivated from whatever realm to take to the streets against Israel and Jews, but Christians being slaughtered doesn't evoke that kind of concern or passion.
Yeah, it's very, very troubling. I mean, personally, I think it's entirely understandable that Western observers are troubled by what's happening in Gaza, and of course, troubled by what's happening to Israeli citizens as well. What is difficult to comprehend is why it is that one particular group should spark that kind of outrage, why the murder of the killing of one particular group of citizens should bring thousands of people out of the streets, yet the killing of another group of citizens should not evoke that reaction. And I think what that is all about is the fact that the Israeli-Gaza conflict, in many people's eyes, is about a very particular political, cultural conflict, which is as much about their view of their own governments and their own view of the West as it is about what's going on in Gaza or Israel. It's not necessarily motivated by the same humanitarian concern. I don't mind people protesting murder or killing by military forces, whoever they might be. I just wish that in the West we were capable of showing the same degree of compassion towards those being killed in North Iraq as those currently being killed in Palestine or indeed in Israeli suburbs.
Well, the Middle East aside, or the Israeli situation aside right now, let me ask you why it is. I mean, I know that here in New York, and elsewhere around the world, Jews demonstrate and rally in support of Jews. Why is it that there are not more Christians and groups and religious leaders, standing outside the White House, taking to the steps of the Capitol, saying, I want to hear from our State Department, I want to hear from our president, or in other countries, doing the same? Why isn't there a massive march on Washington of all denominations of Christians to protest what's going on, to bring attention, to demand answers or acknowledgement or recognition. Why are Christians themselves, to a large extent, if not mostly, silent?
Partially because they don't know about it, because the media is simply not reporting it. It's just not giving it equal airtime. Partially because those people in North Iraq do not have the political lobby that Palestinians have. But I think most of all it comes down to a question of cultural self-flagellation. We've been raised in the West in the last 50 years to believe that Christians are oppressors, that it's axiomatic that if there's some kind of religious struggle going on, it'll be Christians killing some other group of people. That's what we've been raised to believe. Of course, the reality now is very, very different. And there are millions of people across the world, in Nigeria, in the Middle East, who are being persecuted because of their Christian faith. And it's very difficult to convince Westerners simply that that's happening. We've been trained to hate ourselves, quite frankly, here in the West. And so anyone who's dying who is a Christian, well, we find it difficult to process that. And I think some people are even a little afraid that it might be politically incorrect to criticize a group of Muslims for killing a group of Christians because it might, in some bizarre way, be a wider comment upon Islam, which of course it's not, because ISIS and the people who are doing this in northern Iraq come from a very peculiar political branch of Islamofascism that is no reflection upon Islam. Nonetheless, we are so desperately careful not to ever criticize, careful not to ever be seen to be taking the side of the so-called Christian majority, they're not a majority there for sure, that we will not say anything. It's cultural self-flagellation.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Let me ask you about Putin. Let's turn to Putin and talk about the West's weak response to him. You've also written about that extensively. Today we find out that the president wrote to Putin saying that, hey, Vlad, I said I'd give you more leeway, but you didn't have to violate the arms treaty and conduct nuclear tests. That's a no-no. I'm sure Putin read it and chuckled about it, but nonetheless, he must feel he could do anything. I mean, again, look at the response to the Palestinian kids, and look at there was outrage, yeah, for a while about the plane, but you had, I think, 80 kids on that plane, 90 kids on that plane, and Putin will suffer no consequences.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's absolutely shocking. I think in the case of Putin, in many ways, we've become a facilitator. We've become someone who allows him to get away with these things because we keep on playing his game. And it's a game of dialogue. It's a game of always threatening sanctions, which of course gets a lot of Russians behind him, but never actually coming through with them. It's a game of always saying what you're doing is wrong, but never actually putting any consequences in there as a result. 298 innocent people killed on that plane. The US intelligence says that Russia created the context for that crash. It almost certainly supplied the arms, which almost certainly were used to bring down that plane. We have this guy, we have a very good cause, finally, to rally the world around in putting sanctions on him and in demanding that he change his policy towards Ukraine. And what do? Well, the European Union comes up with a bunch of sanctions that are not incredibly impressive, not particularly. For example, we have not put any sanctions on Russia selling us oil and gas here in Europe. Why? Because the Germans, 30% of their oil and gas comes from Russia. So we're not prepared to make the material sacrifice necessary to challenge him. And because he knows that we won't do that, because he knows that we want his oil and gas, he knows he can get away with stuff. Well, you know what? During the Second World War, we made enormous material sacrifices in order to take someone on. I'm not saying it's an analogous situation, but in the past, we've been prepared to make sacrifice. Nowadays, for some reason, we're not prepared to do that. We're prepared to make a big display and complain and shout and cry about it. We won't actually follow through with anything. And when you're a bully like Putin is, you understand action and you regard dialogue as an excuse and an opportunity to push your luck.
Yeah, and you know, it's just a bad situation all the way around, and it could only get worse. And I don't know where this man stops. Hey, Timothy, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you for your perspective, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Anytime.
Thank you. Timothy Stanley, ladies and gentlemen, historian, columnist, and former Oxford and Harvard professor here on the Steve Malzberg Show. It's a mess. I mean, I guess we have to keep quoting Madeleine Albright from here on in until something changes, and I don't know what could change. What could change? Folks, have I made myself clear over the past few shows where I've really stressed this point? We have 2.5 years left of Barack Obama. 2.5 years. We don't have, it's not even down to 2. It's certainly not 1 or 6 months. We got the bulk of his second term left. And he always liked to say it. He hasn't said it in a long time. So I will say it for him to you. No, not if you like your doctor, you could keep it. Not if you like your insurance, you could keep it. No. Not I'll bring a gun to a knife fight. No. Not the cops acted stupidly. No. No, not people used to lock their doors in their cars when I would walk across the street and they thought I was coming near them. No, none of that. No, not I used to steal the joint and take another drag out of turn and close the window so we wouldn't lose any smoke. No, you ain't seen nothing yet. Give me 5 is next. Don't